looking at Welcome to Marwen by Robert Zemeckis. So, what's this about? Well, let's start off with the real story, which is pretty fascinating. So, we had this artist who was into cross dressing and was assaulted by a bunch of hateful extremists. To work through the physical trauma, he created this fantasy world filled with puppets who recreate war scenes. And he's a very fascinating figure, and the idea is actually really good. An artist working through physical trauma using creativity. So the premise is great. So the story writes itself, and of course Zemeckis ignores this completely and creates this weird gobbledygook mess of CGI and bizarro neoconservative politics and just insane plotting. So what is happening in Welcome to Marwen? Well, we get the basic story, but then he adds and changes a few things that make it really stupid and ridiculous. So instead of just generic hateful people, we have neo-Nazis who assault the main hero, and the neo-Nazis send him into insanity. And yes, he's still into cross-dressing, but he's also into pornography, and he's completely heterosexual. There is no hint he's homosexual. They make that very explicitly clear. Oh no, he's heterosexual. Don't worry. So it's a very, very weird story. However, he does get brownie points because I think this is the first time ever, I'm being serious, he has a positive queer character. In fact, a woman of color who's queer. So, all right. So it's a weird, weird film on so many levels, political and aesthetic. And I can't deny Steve Carell is charismatic, and I think he gave his best try because this thing is so horrible on so many levels because just the animated fantasy world itself is so ugly and mushy, and it looks like gook. And you're like, why? Why did you take this interesting idea where you used real puppets and used animated puppets? And why do the animated puppets look like strippers and why are their enemies Nazis? In fact, they even ask, like, well, why did you use World War II? And he says, because that's when we were good guys. So it's like, there's no even reason why you use this time period. It's just totally ridiculous. And so, of course, he has to add a lot of complications because he has a love interest. And he's like, okay, maybe we can go out, maybe we can't. And they're a cute couple. I think Leslie Mann is also giving her best effort. But this is just too insane and ridiculous and absurd. And then there's this Russian caretaker who has a moose and squirrel accent. She literally talks like a cartoon. And of course, she shows up in the fantasy world. And you're like, so on the one hand, it's challenging stereotypes and it's filled with so many ethnic and sexual stereotypes. You're like, who is this for exactly? It can't be for liberals because it's filled with too much, whatever you want to call it, masculine glorification of violence and blah, 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 and pro-American propaganda. But it can't be for conservatives because it's trying to say, we all need to tolerate men who dress like women. We all just need to grow up and be comfortable with differences. So tonally, politically, aesthetically, this thing is so chaotic and all over the place. Like, who is this for? Who would care about this? And oh, by the way, we're going to release it during the holidays. Who in their right mind wants to, during the holidays, sit and look at really ugly animation and bizarro neoconservative politics? Who? Who would want to do that? Who would want to do that? Eye-gougingly stupid, ridiculously directed, insanely stupid plotting, and characters that are paper thin. It's just like, there's almost nothing good I can say about this thing. The animation is terrible. The performances are just barely competent. The directing is fairly shallow and just very one note. He really doesn't do anything. In fact, he does ridiculous callbacks to his own canon. So yeah, guess what? Back to the Future is inserted in here for no reason at all. We're just going to have a moment of Back to the Future. Why? No reason. We're just going to do it. It's cynical. It's nostalgic, it's corporate, it's politically correct, but it's a political correctness for every ideology. You can literally be a right-wing authoritarian and think, I like this a whole lot. You can be a left-wing authoritarian and say, I really like this. He's proving that left-wing violence works. So this thing is just insane on almost every front, and it's boring. It's just lethargic. Its pacing is off. And just the moment that they're all melodramatic, like, oh no, he's really injured. He's really traumatized. I can't believe any of it. He just doesn't feel like a traumatized person. He just feels like a puppet who just is engaging in the plot and doing this and that. And it is so explicit with its messages because, of course, in one scene when they're fighting the Nazis, they're fighting in a church. And of course, he's like, yes, I will use the power of Jesus and these good-looking strippers, and I will overcome the evil fascists. I'm like, what? Even its pro-feminine message doesn't make any sense because one of his enemies is not just the Nazis, but a female German witch. That's right. German womanhood is represented by an evil witch. I'm like, what is the point of this? I can't figure out Whose side is he on? What does he care about? What does he want? The only, and I mean this totally seriously, the only nice point about this film is its sentimental ending where he shows off his artwork. Okay, that felt genuine. That felt like, okay, that's something this character would do. And unfortunately, it's a brief thing, and it's at the very end. It's like, okay, well, the ending was kind of strong. Unfortunately, it's only a couple minutes, and the vast majority of the rest of Marwen is so stupid, so insulting, so juvenile, and just so ridiculously ugly. I'm like, why? Why was this made? Who made this? For what purpose besides money? It's just bafflingly evil, stupid, grotesque, and it's even its own message is completely self-contradictory. So, but there you are. Welcome to Marwen. Don't see it. Easily one of the worst films of all time. Easily one of the worst films of the decade. Not even close. It's like it's definitely going to be on everyone's top 10 list. It's that horribly misguided and just terribly executed.